suffering. He's a nice guy there. I love this part. You begin to realize that the neurosis you had is gone. It's true. He used to say to us, just do it. It works. And I was thinking, sure, if I really try hard, maybe, But he's saying, just do it. It works. It's almost like all you have to do is get your butt down on the cushion and do the practice. But it does help to do a better version of the practice. And that's what you're doing. When we do this, what we did tonight, working with space, it's the best. If you just try and focus on an object, as you're taught, for instance, in a yoga studio or with TM, it's good practice. But it leads to what are called the God realms. And by that, what they mean is that's sort of metaphoric language. It leads to pleasurable states of mind, if you can really do it. And those pleasurable states of mind do not bring insight. They are just pleasure. It's like going to the movies and getting absorbed in a film, only you get absorbed in the object of meditation. And you can actually experience trance states. So it's good practice, it's good as a beginning, but this is better. What we're doing tonight is reality practice. That you're coming back to your life as it exists, as it happens in the present moment. What we did on the cushion tonight, you can do walking down the street. Just don't do the breath. Just come back to the space of awareness as you walk down the street. See the thoughts that you were having and come back. The more you do that, you are shifting loyalty away from dreams, which can be so painful. Can't they? Depression is so powerful and can really grip you. That many people, including me, experience it very powerfully in the mornings when you wake up. And then the quality of the day burns it off like mist. That's the most powerful time of day. And for those of you who do experience it in the morning, the instruction is get the fuck out of bed. Get moving. Go pee. Brush your teeth. Take your vitamins. And the mist of that depression will rise. It will evaporate as you get moving and get into the day. But lying in bed and just letting it revolve is the worst. And that's what we're doing. We're shifting our allegiance, shifting our loyalty. And it shifts by itself. You make the effort. But it's amazing how suddenly you realize things are different. The mind is changing. It sort of happens by itself. He says here, to review, having developed the non-theistic view, this is a strong view. This is a brave view. This is a powerful view. You're not looking for somebody out there to save you. Screw that, It's like we're alone. We're so alone, it's beyond loneliness. It's just as it is. It's in this space. To review, having developed the non-theistic view, you develop a meditation practice that transcends the highest euphoria of spirituality. He's talking about these trance states that you can get into, as well as ordinary worldly materialism. That's the materialism that says, unless I've got a certain standard of living, I'm going to be unhappy. Then you develop action that transcends the extremes of asceticism and indulgence. You practice the middle way. That's what we did tonight. Coming back to our lives in this open space of the present moment. That is the middle way. Having done all that, the result is that you have nothing to give up. Everything just goes. Without your having to give them up or push them out, obstacles begin to lift. We could repeat again and again, at the Hinayana level, the Mahayana level, and the Vajrayana level, the view of the four norms of Dharma, that's impermanence, suffering, egolessness, and peace. The practice that transcends worldly concepts, that's meditation. By transcending worldly concepts, he means coming back to this space of the present moment. the action that is beyond extremes, transcendental common sense about how we treat our lives. We do what's necessary to keep body and soul together. And the result, these are the four things now, the result, that obstacles remove themselves if we study, and especially if we practice. Especially if we practice the kind of mindfulness that we did together here, of coming back to our lives in the present moment, not looking for an escape, but coming back to awareness. So, that's the message of that chapter. He sums it all up. Any comments or complaints, suggestions? Literary allusions? Milos.
I was really intrigued by I was really intrigued by the continuity thing. So, we don't exist really, but how do we get from our house to here consistently? Like, in a way, like what is the thread that is continuous? Is it? I mean, it's probably memory, because we've done something before, and then in a way that's our blueprint, and then we repeat those things. Like nothing is the same. Like 2 cans of Coca-Cola are not the same, but we think they're the same. Mm-hmm. So like does he go more into what is this continuous element? Let's say your selfhood, that's a fiction according to what you said, but how is this continuous? Why don't we just forget who we are, Maybe that's good.
I don't know. I really don't know why we do that. The only thing that's really continuous is the present moment.
Perception.
The present moment.
Yeah.
Now. It's always now. It's always now. Mm-hmm. It's like we're trapped in now.
It's Groundhog's Day.
Huh?
Groundhog's Day.
Kind of. Except the things nothing repeats.
Right.
But, the word tantra, that's literally what it means, continuity. And there are different interpretations of what that means, what that continuity is. One of them, the most popular, is it's the continuity of this present moment. I once heard Trungpa Rinpoche asked, he was giving a seminar on the subject of death and rebirth. And as Buddhists, we don't like the word reincarnation, prefer rebirth. Here's the reason. Reincarnation is the idea that there's some unchanging substance which reincarnates, takes a new body. That's what reincarnation means. It's like if there's a soul that sort of moves from body to body to body. The bodies wear out and die, the soul finds another one. And what Buddhism says is there's no such thing as a soul. There's just this continual process of change in which there's a continuity within the change. There's not complete discontinuity, and yet nothing inheres. Nothing. And I was listening to him talk about this, and he was talking about how physical death at the end of one's life is just a grosser example of the kind of change that we experience during our lifetimes. So during our lifetimes, we experience, if you're a man, you lose your hair. All of us, lose our youth. We lose the strength of our bodies eventually, and we become old and feeble and so forth. There's a lot of loss, right? And you can lose a limb. You could lose, I have a friend whose mother's about to lose her eye at the age of 88. You can lose all kinds of things. So physical death is just a grosser example of that same loss. When you die, there are certain according to the Buddhist teachings, consciousness continues, a certain core consciousness. A lot of what the mental events that we experience get stripped away, but the whole world is taken away. You lose your senses, so you lose the world. So he was talking about this, and he was saying about how we prefer rebirth, because then what happens is that consciousness, it's like in a dream. First it takes a dream body, and then eventually it wakes up and you have a physical body, and that's what happens to a consciousness. Eventually it takes a new physical body and a mother's womb and so forth, but everything's constantly changing. Nothing stays the same. So this person is, I was 25 when I heard this, and I remember there was an old lady listening, and my guess is she was about my age now. And she asks in the Q&A, she asks, well, how do you know there's such a thing as rebirth? And what, of course, you could hear was she wanted the reassurance that it wasn't going to end. And he kind of, in almost a non sequitur, said, how do you know there's such a thing as rebirth? His response was, because it's always now. It's happening now. This is it. It's always now. It's never anything but now. The contents of now are continually changing. But now never stops. It's the continuity of Tantra. It's the thread that goes through it. And when these changes, it's like there is nothing that actually has real existence. It's just like an image in a mirror, or a reflection in water, or pixels on a computer screen, you know? That's what we're living in the middle of right now. Second by second. Yeah.
So what is reborn? So then what is reborn? What is reborn?
There's nothing that's reborn. It's just a constant change, like dominoes going over, you know?
Well, you were saying the difference between reincarnation and rebirth.
Yeah. Well,
If it's
I mean, there's a stream. They talk about the stream, you know? It's like a river streaming. Never stays the same for one instant. And yet there's a continuity in the streaming of the river. There's a streaming in the of the consciousness of an individual. Nothing stays the same from instant to instant. Not even for an instant. And yet it's like water flowing. See, they're not trying to explain it. It's more like a description of what we're in the middle of. And we try to concretize it, freeze it, hold on to it, and therein lies our suffering.
It sounds like something that someday that makes perfect sense to me. You can't really explain that.
Does mean perfect sense. You're saying it does or it doesn't?
At some point, it's the kind of thing that I would just like, oh yeah, I get that.
Well, you see, the thing is that all you have to do is come present into the present moment. Let go of thought and come back into this. And in doing that, the world changes. And also, we open ourselves up to a very different world, a world of magic. You know? Because this world is magical. But as long as we stay stuck in this world of things, then we miss it. We miss the beauty, the poetry, the magic, the art, and the grace, the creativity. They say that enlightened people, you know, Rinpoche, are just endlessly curious and are artists. He says, you know, that everything you do, every gesture, every word, can be a work of art when you're just totally present for it.
I'm still having a hard time grasping the difference between reincarnation and something being reborn. The fact that there's not a soul, but yet there's a consciousness.
But the consciousness itself is not a thing. It's just a continual streaming of events, one into the next. You know, from love into lust, into anger, into, you know, absent-mindedness, into what did I have for breakfast, into, you know, all kinds of, our minds are just a constant streaming. There's no one thing that inheres. Can you find it? I can't.
I think reincarnation would imply a soul, because the soul sort of is then has a bodily cover, and rebirth would just be part of a cycle. So reincarnation is more.
Yeah. Reincarnation is sort of like the soul takes a new suit of clothes, right? New body, right?
Well, maybe this is more like an energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found
That's good.
quite recently I found that home in England, and is it on? Oh, doesn't matter, is it?
Just to record. That's all.
That's right. I was back home in England, and I was with my parents, who are getting on a little bit now, and they're more aware of death around them due to their friends. And while I was there, someone passed, but also at that time, someone else who was in our sort of friendship group or family group gave birth, and it was quite a mad time, because I think right there and then I just could see the balance of it. You know, like you're saying, it's a rebirth. So, and it took away the heaviness of that thought of losing someone, and then the joy of the rebirth. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So it was a balance, and I could I looked at my mum when she told me that someone had given birth, and we sort of looked at each other and we're like, yeah, last week was a bit shitty, this week's not too bad, is it? You know, it was like just the tip of it. Do you get it?
Yeah, I get it.
Is that a bit...
I think, again, to come back to Joe's question of how can there be continuity?
Yeah.
What's continuous? It's just like what's happening right now in this room. You know, there's a shifting, a changing in the group, you know, from moment to moment. Same thing with each one of us. And at the moment of death, it's just a bigger change. It's a more fundamental change, more changes quantitatively. But it's just like right now, you know, there's a continuity within the change. And yet, moment to moment, this group is never the same in one instant. Everybody moves, shifts, they're looking a different way, thinking a different thought, you know, all that kind of stuff.
So, I mean, what came up for me when that word came up was this kind of notion that I come back to over and over with some of the teachings, which is absolute versus relative view on something like the skandhas, for example. So you can get into a teaching like that and get really kind of tripped out on it, but that's on an absolute level. But in a relative level, you know, you're John, I'm Mike, I go to work, people know me as Mike, you know, there's that, you know, I have to physically walk around things or I'll bump into them and fall over. There's that reality of living in this 3D world. So that's how I saw it. I mean, is there wisdom to that, or?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, sure. You're Mike, I'm John. We haven't switched yet. It's Brandon.
So to piggyback off of that question, I think you had started out by saying earlier that there's often contradictions in the teachings in Buddhism. And one of the ones that came up for me tonight was kind of talking about this relative experience that we have, and even in your meditation, you're asking us to be very aware of each other and our space, and so there is a sense, an invitation to connect, even at the same time that we're focusing on our breath, or in a way distancing ourselves from the attachment to the surroundings, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But then you're talking about something that's always, I think, been confusing to me, which is shunyata. And I sometimes believe I understand the essence of it as a concept, but how that can be useful on a daily basis. Like, this is rich, the Sangha is rich, our talk is rich, our experiences are rich. We're conditioned to love and fall in love and fall out of love and all of these things, love our animals, our parents, most of the time. At the same time, it's all empty. There's an emptiness to it, a divorcing of self, a divorcing of ego. And so I think that's where I get twisted up a little bit. And I forget who it was. It might have been Alan or somebody when I took the courses at Nalanda Bodhi, who said that sometimes studying shunyata you actually need a guide, a help, a teacher to really
Oh, yeah.
help you understand that, because you can get quite lost in what exactly that is. But for just our purposes tonight, is there a way that you can talk about that paradox, if it even is a paradox, or how connection and love and this all being very rich and real, relative, also can have a relationship with this idea of emptiness and shunyata?
Emptiness is a very advanced concept. Very. And so we can study it theoretically, and we're not really doing that tonight too much. A little bit, we are. As soon as we start talking about egolessness, we're talking about emptiness. Because the emptiness really is the full-blown implication of what egolessness is. When we talk about egolessness of self and egolessness of other, the fact that I and other don't exist, that is emptiness. And so one can study it intellectually. That's one way to approach it. The other way to approach it is through one's practice. And that is much more available to all of us, especially with the practice I keep plugging that we are doing here of this open-eyed meditation, resting in space. That is the approach to emptiness, to shunyata. That's it. That's the way you do it. Because shunyata is here in the world. It's only here in the world. If you close your eyes, it's going to be much more difficult to have an experience like that. But it's possible to have an emptiness or a shunyata experience. And what it is really it comes in the gaps. It surprises you. It comes when you're not looking. If you're looking for it, you're never going to find it. But if you just do the practice, especially when you're walking down the street, the hardest time to practice by far. But if you can remember to come back, just keep coming back to the present, gaps happen. Gaps in thought. It's like the thinking mind cracks open, and suddenly, you go like this. What was that? And it can often come to you as, I don't even want to describe it, because then by doing that, I set you up to go looking for it, and that will be an obstacle. You see, it comes in the openness of our minds. And the best way to prepare yourself for it is to do some study, because what the study does is it opens you up to the possibilities that things aren't the way you've been thinking they were, that there's something different that's possible. That's what study does. But then the practice is what makes it come alive. The practice on the cushion, just coming back to your life and daily life. And also, I hate to say this because it's the most difficult part, is a relationship with a teacher of one kind or another, because teachers can bring it home according to their skill and their own level of understanding. And they can, give the student the experience. So those are the ways it happens. You prepare by studying. You improve your life by meditating. And he says it. The confusion leaves. It just sort of departs. Yeah.
Does that go back to the notion of... that goes back to the notion of you don't stop doing something. It just goes away after a while.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's one of many things that really resonated with me in the chapter.
Right. Yeah. That it just goes away. That's what makes it so real.
So it's like beginner's mind also.
Very much. It's always that. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It's always that. Yeah. And it's a huge grace that it goes off by itself. You don't have to do it. It's like, what a gift. All you have to do is do the practice.
When you say that there is no God in Buddhism, but then there are bodhisattvas such as Tara, and we practice mantra chanting on Tara, doesn't it mean that it's kind of God and we concentrate our mind on it and we ask, sometimes we ask Tara about help or something.
Yeah, no, Tara and these different practices that we do with what seem to be external deities, they're not external deities. They are within us. And we are externalizing them because we in our confusion are constantly setting the world up as I and other. And so we look at someone like Tara, but you have to realize that what she represents is your own wisdom. And you're calling it forth when you do this practice. You're changing your mind. You're opening yourself up to the possibility of seeing the world as sacred in the way that she is sacred, that she represents that sacredness. Normally we go around and we think, the world's just a piece of shit, It's just a veil of tears. It's a hotbed of suffering. And what the teachings do, especially the tantric teachings and images of Tara are very much a part of that, is it presents us with an alternative way that we begin to see the world. We might begin to see it as sacred. And to see it as sacred, you have to strip away your own preconceptions, the judgments of good and bad, what things are and aren't, and begin to see it naked. That's what the practice is about. We're coming back into the space of this present moment. Seeing the world naked. That's what she represents. And when you do see it as naked, it can be very vivid. It can be full of color and heart. And Tara represents heart. She represents that love, that compassion, the interconnectedness that we miss because we're so self-absorbed all the time. Because we're walking around lost in this dream of I and other. So there is a line, we should do the sadhana Mahamudra here. It's a text that Trungpa Rinpoche taught. And there's a line in it I've always loved, that the idea of an external deity has deceived us and led us astray. The idea of an external deity. There is no external deity. They're all projections out of your mind. They might seem like they're out there, like you seem like you're out there and I seem like I'm out here, But actually, it's all a story that's being projected out of mind. And so is Tara. But she represents a very benign, helpful principle of mind, principle of compassion, interconnectedness, and kindness. And so when we do a practice with her, we're calling that quality forth from ourselves. But she doesn't actually exist out there like somebody we're going to go meet and a god. Maybe we should end. I think we've got some refreshments. Yeah, one last thing, Brandon.
So I'm curious, John, how you absorbed the phone call and the knowledge of the phone call and the reality that something is amiss physically, and how you could tie that into your experience here in this room.
How I can do that? Well, thank you all for letting me do that.
Yeah. It was part of you.
Yeah.
Told us earlier.
So I'm very appreciative of your generosity and
Well, I once saw Zongsa Khensi Rinpoche
yeah.
sitting on a throne at Shambhala Center, and suddenly the phone rings, and he said, it's his cell phone, and he said, sorry, that's my father, and I better pick up.
Give her your chat.
And his father was...
You're going to have to lead this because that's my phone call.